This week's episode of The Clear Out was recorded on the 6th of June 2023 at home in Wicklow, and there is no unifying theme for this week's episode. I talk about quite a few different things. I start off with the idea of retreat and where we retreat to, what we retreat to, and what we're retreating from. In my case, movies is where I often retreat to. Of course, in that conversation, I end up talking about trauma and habitual behaviours and what we try to avoid. I also, in this episode, just talk about the summer in Ireland, long summer nights, good weather, and the effect that has on the nation. I, at some point, share summer memories and jobs working with my father as a teenager. I talk about the pursuits that I consider healthy retreats. So for me, swimming and martial arts. I talk about those things. What else features in today's episode? Midgies. What are midgies? If you don't know, you're very lucky. And if you do know, you know what I'm talking about. Bloody midgies. Yeah, I'm not sure what else is in there, but it's again another episode like some of the other more recent ones where I'm labouring. I was labouring under the effects of hay fever. So forgive me if I sounded a bit dozy, a bit groggy. Also, there was some technical interference at some point, which I decided to keep in the recording. And I have a bit of speculation as to the provenance of that particular interference. Okay, there may be other things, and it all kind of hangs together, and I hope you like it, as always. So yeah, I'll see you around the corner. Cheers.
Ooh, not gonna change my mind, leaving the dream behind, keep my emoji inside.
Hi, my name is Dara Clear, and you're listening to The Clear Out. You're very welcome. How are you? If you're in my neck of the woods, are you enjoying these long, early summer nights? I say early summer. We're getting closer to midsummer. The summer solstice is only a couple of weeks away, and that will be the longest day of the year. The long days, the bright nights are something I really love about Ireland, and something I missed when I was in Australia. I mean, there were different things to be missed, different things not to be missed, different things to be enjoyed about Australia that weren't available here. But the long days, the bright nights, I think I'd always taken them for granted. And I was surprised in the Australian summer in Melbourne, where we were, when those bright summer nights just didn't go quite so long. I mean, right now I think it's nearly 10 o'clock here, is it? 9:45, and yeah, it's still very bright out. I don't want to say really bright, it might give you the wrong impression, but it is really bright. But it is really bright, and that light will hold for another good 30 to 40 minutes. It may be darkish by the time I finish recording, but it's it's just lovely. It's there's a real quietness to it as well. So, sort of a sleepiness in the air with that light. And certainly when I think about the pets in the house here at #blessed, they're all asleep. The two cats, the old cat, the young cat, and Pepper the dog, they all go into a bit of a shutdown mode. And it's all just very dusky and sleepy and extremely chilled out. It's nice energy. It really is. You may or may, if you're a regular listener, you may detect the slightly nasal fog tone through my voice. The old hay fever keeps on running. I don't think I had it last summer at all, but this summer it's been bad. So yeah, I know I've taken 31 or 32 antihistamines in a row, one a day for the last 32 days, and yeah, I find it very frustrating, particularly when I sit down here to record a podcast and I go, oh yeah, I'm not really in my normal, I can't really access my normal vocal energy and my normal vocal clarity. And I find that quite frustrating, to be honest with you. So yeah, but what can you do? Listen, it is what it is. I mean, here I am, surrounded by trees and plants and verdant growth and pollen, an abundance of pollen and swallows dipping in and out, and yeah, I shouldn't be complaining at all. I'm just as I say, I'm just feeling frustrated with it. But anyway, that's no place to start. Hi, how are you? Come in. I'm not in a good mood. Cheer me up. Where to begin? Where do we start? You come in through the door. What's the first thing that hits you? What is the first thing that hits you? You enter someone's home. What is the first thing that hits you? Is it visual? Is it something olfactory? Is it a smell? Is it a scent? Is it a stink? Is it energy? Energy, man. Is it energy? Is that what you pick up on? The energy. Yeah. I think it is. I think it's energy. Maybe it's a combination of all those things. I mean, we're very sensory, aren't we? Us humans, we earthlings, we're sensory. What we take in through the eyes, what we take in through the nose, the ears. I was swimming earlier, a late afternoon swim, and yeah, the weather, it has to be commented upon. We've just had about 4 weeks straight of really nice sunny weather, and it's really it's sort of embarrassing how enthralling most Irish people find this kind of weather. We're just kind of beguiled by it, and don't quite know how to deal with it, being the kind of pasty paddies that we are on the far reaches of Europe. We get a sort of relatively prolonged spell of weather like this, and it's this strange bewitchment on the entire nation. And some people go a bit doolally, they go a bit crazy, and for many people it just means they have to drink more. They have to ramp up the fetishization of the pint of alcohol. Sure, what else would you be doing? I don't really care for that aspect of our culture. I struggle with it. I struggle with the poverty of imagination, and my struggle. I struggle with my struggle being struggled with by others, and I struggle with the insinuation that it's a zero-sum game. That because I'm not, dementedly, gleefully, relentlessly posting shots of pints on social media, or wallowing in vats of ice cubed cider, then I must be lying somewhere in the dark with a hair shirt, beating myself for even contemplating the sniff of a bit of alcohol. I might be paranoid, I might be oversensitive, I might be projecting, but I'm not that. I like a drink or two, sometimes 3 or 4. Often I like the idea of a few drinks more than actually having a few drinks. I often find I have one and I'm like, okay, that's it, I'm done, I'm bored now. Maybe one more if I'm in a particularly good mood. But then my appetite seems to veer off the road to in search of other delights, in search of other flavours. Anyway, I don't know. I might end up eating my words. There's a few events coming up in the family calendar. A few big birthdays, and maybe with the good vibes, with the crack, as we like to say on the Emerald Isle. The crack, the mischief, the merriment, the fun, the sport. There might be a bit more consumption than usual. But anyway, whatever. Yes. What did I want to talk about? Well, it's connected actually, I realise. Because I was thinking, this is how I preface, a lot of my meanderings on the podcast. I was thinking about the idea of retreat. Now, not a Buddhist retreat or a silent retreat or a yoga retreat, because they're all very spiritual and infused with wellness and discipline and forms of what? Forms of self-denial, perhaps. Forms of voluntary deprivation in service of personal betterment. No, I'm talking merely retreat on its own, without any other nice descriptive to contextualize it. The idea of retreating to a safe place. The idea of retreating to a place of comfort. The idea of retreating to a haven, some form of safe arbor where we can hide. And I think that's the area I'm looking at. And sometimes I feel it's necessary. I think we choose it. I don't think we always voluntarily choose it. I think we have habitual patterns and contexts of retreat that are pretty embedded. The places we go to comfort ourselves, and not necessarily in an overtly beneficial way, but definitely in a way of sort of holding ourselves, Now, I mean, I spoke a few weeks ago about self-soothing behaviours, and I also spoke a couple of weeks ago about the idea of safety. But I'm probably trying to put this idea of retreat in slightly less wellness terms and more in terms of helplessness, rather than, if I speak about safety, as I did in a couple of episodes ago, or speak about self-soothing, that's not helplessness. That's actively choosing things to help ourselves. And I'm thinking more of retreat in terms of being connected to a sense of defeat, being connected to a sense of inability to deal with stuff, or a sense of personal collapse, of personal surrender, where I don't even know if we get to wave the white flag. I think we just disappear to that place that really becomes very insular and very shut off from other people and shut off from the world. And I think this came across my own chain of thought, my own train of thought today. Because I was thinking, I've probably always chosen from a very young age. Movies. Watching movies is one of my favourite modes of retreat. They continue to be a place I like to hide. As much as I enjoy movies and sort of study movies and think about movies a lot, and of course, there's my acting background as well is in the mix there always. But it's it's a lifelong love affair with movies, and they do continue to be an escape pod, and a place where I will just lose myself, or immerse myself, and that's all. So I was just thinking about that earlier. I just found myself reflecting on that, and that's often my form of comfort. If I'm just wanting to disengage and switch off, and if I had the freedom to do so, I'd probably just happily sit and ignore everyone and just watch a movie, as I have done over the years, habitually. But I'm just wondering about that whole idea then of retreat, and I'm trying to recognize within this, maybe it's not always a healthy thing, because there's an implied avoidance. And I suppose with a lot of habitual behavior in this area of retreat, defeat, hiding, self-comforting and avoidance, there is a fundamental shunning of what, I don't want to say responsibility, because that implies something else, but there's a shunning of, or an abdication of stepping up to the plate of dealing with the thing, whatever the thing may be. And often the thing is something about ourselves, really. because I think we can. Yeah, this is armchair psychology, but if you're talking about things we try to avoid, it's probably going to be something extremely revelatory about our own wiring, our own personality, our own psychology, because it has such a powerful effect on us to make us want to curl ourselves up in a ball, get into a fetal position, then yeah, it's something real. It's something that is on a very deep level, something that we find confronting. And to my mind, that's what recommends the confronting of it. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm not telling you anything you don't already know, am I? This is feel the fear and do it anyway territory, I suppose. This is to harken back to the Star Wars episode from a month ago. This is Luke Skywalker going into the swampy cave on Dagobah, Yoda's home planet, where he faces Darth Vader, only to find out it's himself that he's most afraid of. I mean, that's a classic martial arts truism across all traditional martial arts. Your greatest enemy is yourself. To defeat your enemy, first you must defeat yourself. And yeah, that's that idea, maybe not as literal as that, but that idea probably underpins a lot of my own philosophy around trying to be well. I think I don't know if I'm going to move away from using the word wellness. Maybe that word's become a little bit contaminated by overuse and misrepresentation, and just being a bit of a general online placebo term. And I think I prefer the extended idea of trying to be well, or trying to live well, or attempting to live well, trying to have a healthy relationship with oneself and with the people and the world around you. That's they're the core ideas, aren't they? Really, wellness. When people ask me, I'm asked so much, Dara, I hear you're a podcaster. What is it you podcast about? What's your podcast about? And I don't really like saying, it's a wellness podcast, because I think that just connotes a very particular thing. That is perhaps, I don't know, but I think it's arguably narrower than what I do here. Maybe it's not. Maybe I'm flattering myself. I may as well, because nobody else will. Yeah, you with me? I hope so. Yeah, but anyway, look, retreat. I don't know. I think there is, to drop in another cliche, choose your battles. And sometimes it's the more prudent move to abandon the battlefield rather than stay and be cannon fodder, rather than stay and be slaughtered, massacred, bayoneted, whatever it might be. I think sometimes, run away, live to fight another day. It's maybe that's something we struggle with. Maybe you don't, and it's not something I often sort of put out there in front of myself as explicitly as I'm doing tonight. But the sense of I can't. That's it doesn't feel very edifying, does it? It doesn't exactly gird the loins. I can't. Because I think many of us spend a huge amount of time saying I can, or saying I will, or saying I must, and maybe we don't articulate it, but we make ourselves act out in a way that reflects those commitments. They're not necessarily convictions. I think they're just part of that stepping up I referred to earlier. And I think that can come at great cost. I think it does come at enormous cost to many of us. To all of us, I would suggest. Although maybe not. I was talking to a friend yesterday, and she was just speaking about, basically speaking about grief and speaking about, a bereavement. She lost her father, and she was just still struggling with the grief, with the sadness, and she was commenting that other people in the family seemed to not be doing so badly and seemed to be able to just carry on in quite a breezy, easy way. And she was clearly experiencing an inherent conflict with that. And so we were just talking about how, being sensitive. I spoke about this earlier this year. Being sensitive, highly sensitive people, HSPs. That was the thing, wasn't it? Being sensitive is, I think it's an amazing thing. I mean, I think I'm sensitive. I've always thought of myself as being sensitive in the, in both directions. Sensitive in the receiving of life, and sensitive in a sort of an outward directed energy as well. And I think there's something really, I was going to use the word beautiful. Is that too soggy? Is that too soggy and mushy a word? But I think there is something really beautiful about being sensitive, and the way that life can be experienced, and the way that other people can be experienced. If if that sensitivity is something that you have insight into, if it's something you're able to, incorporate and manage and utilize in your day-to-day experience, if it's something that you have an accommodation with, because if it's a type of sensitivity that's unbearable, that everything is overwhelming or too much, that's not so great. That's really a burden and a chore and a challenge. And then I think there can be a terrible loss of resilience if that is your mode, if that is your positioning in the world, because the world is it's a jungle, isn't it? It's a tough old place out there, and it's a very hard station if you simply can't cope, because then life is just constant stress and anxiety, and the desire to retreat must be ever present. So I don't know if that's what you're experiencing. I mean, that's you have my sympathies, but I'd be like, okay, what are your strategies? Are you interested in not being quite so raw all the time? I don't know. And I mean, this is not. I shouldn't be projecting anything or trying to articulate what that experience is, but it must be bloody difficult. And if you think about it, just to go back to the whole habitual behavior that I was referring to earlier, I mean, arguably, those habituated behaviors, which are fundamentally, forms of addiction, or maybe forms of self-soothing that aren't so healthy, they're all connected to trauma of some kind, trauma of some degree, and that's really, I don't know. I don't know if this is very, I don't know if this is very solipsistic of me, but I mean, that is, not everybody's traumatized, I suppose. I mean, I'm challenging myself on this. I read an interview recently with the Irish female DJ radio presenter, Annie Mac, who made her career over in England and on, I think, on the BBC Radio, and something came up in the article about she was like, no trauma in my life, and she was sort of perplexed by the need for therapy, and healing and introspection. No, and I mean, and I don't want to mischaracterize her. She wasn't. It wasn't my impression from the profile that she was lacking empathy or dismissing the need for those things, but just in her own experience, all of that was kind of anathema, and I find myself, I marvel at that. I marvel at an adult human who can say that, and for it to be on any level true or real. I'm like, wow. Extraordinary. You're the one star in the sky that hasn't got any issues. I find that mind-blowing. Now, you can hear that, can't you? There's some sort of interference coming in. This happened last week as well. Okay, I'm going to pause and come back. Okay, I've decided to leave that in there just because it might be the most interesting thing about this episode. Interference. My phone was sitting beside the microphone, and maybe that's what was causing that interference, because there were a couple of messages on my phone, so I've just thrown the phone on the floor. The floor is carpeted, so don't you worry about my phone's little body or my phone's sensitive personality. It's landed on a nice rug on top of a carpet, so it is undamaged, and it wasn't thrown in anger, because I can't afford to I can't afford to destroy my phone. Anyway, that does seem to have fixed that issue. Unless it was aliens trying to get in touch with me across the universe, across the airwaves. Maybe they're fans of the podcast. Maybe they've been listening, and maybe they wanted me to shut up. Maybe they're sick of me banging on about wellness and trauma and all the other things that I talk about here. Or maybe they love it. Maybe, as one person said to me recently, maybe they wanted to say, hey, the podcast is brilliant. Keep doing it. Now that's nice. That was a nice thing to say. That's just cheered me up immediately. The podcast is brilliant. Keep doing it. Okay? Thank you. Thank you, person who said that to me. That was very nice. That touched me in a good place. I'm going to get away from retreat and come back to another very central theme of wellness, of trying to live well, and that simply is the idea of mindfulness, simply the idea of being present. And I don't know how I got away from it. I mentioned I was swimming earlier. I think that was the X. I was going to talk about the sensory experiences. Oh yeah, because I was going on about the weather then. The water was quite rough, not too crazy, but it was a strong enough current, nice bit of chop on the water. But the water temperature was lovely. It was, I guesstimated it was 14 degrees Celsius, and I checked later and it was 14.3. But I swear to God, it felt so comfortable. It felt so lovely. If I hadn't been on the clock to get my ass back home to #blessed, I would have stayed in a lot longer. But I had a lovely, lovely swim, and it really was. I found the temperature so comfortable, and the sun was shining down. It was just bliss, just to be in the water, and the water quality was good. It was a lovely blue, sky was blue, sun was coming down, and I was just enjoying every moment of it, every stroke, every extended moment in the water, carrying myself through with a variety of strokes. And I really just, even now I feel, oh yeah, I'd love to be back in that water. It was so gorgeous. And it's funny because I was talking to a couple of people earlier today, and they were saying, one of them was saying how he'd been down to the sea at the weekend, and it was for his first time down this summer, this year, and he thought the water was unbearable, freezing. Your feet turn to ice, he said. And then the other person was like, yeah, only lunatics and madmen get in the water in Ireland. Only lunatics and madmen would get into the Irish Sea. And he laughed as he nodded at me, knowing full well my own routines and patterns. And I wouldn't even waste my breath, because you're not gonna convince people. And I've always thought that. Like, I've said that about karate before as well. I've never, in over 30 years of doing karate, I've never actively tried to recruit someone to start karate. apart from, when, in the last couple of years when I started offering my own outdoor classes, but even still, my whole approach is very, only come if you want to be here. People, they're either into it or they're not. And, I've never done these things because I'm looking for a club or a community or to connect with other people. I do these things to connect with myself, said the narcissist. But it's true. It's true. For me, I suppose they're sort of monkish pursuits, and they're related to self-discipline. And there is to me, there's always been a sort of a spiritual quest within the repetition of both things, martial arts and karate. Martial arts, tai chi, karate, and swimming. And I've always been happy to do them all by myself. And in swimming in particular, I've really steered away from swimming groups and swimming communities because because I find they contaminate the purity that I enshrine swimming. I enshrine swimming with such sort of spiritual focus. I'm laughing at myself as I say this, but it's true. It's true. I don't really want to talk to anybody. I often don't want to be seen by anybody. I just want to be there in the water by myself, and shut the world away. So that's an example of retreat in a way. That's my silent retreat, because I can't talk when I'm swimming. And my own personal practice with martial arts, that's in that area as well. I don't need a witness. I don't need an audience. The only thing with martial arts, though, is it is great to have a training partner in terms of testing their skill set. But those days might be gone for me, just because of the nature of what I've put in place in my life in the last few years. I think dojo training is in my past. Funnily enough, I was considering going to a day of karate training with a couple of my old instructors. I saw something advertised on social media, but then life got in the way. There's a prior engagement my wife has, so I can't really skedaddle off to jump around in my white pajamas. But that's okay. That's okay. I enjoy that challenge. I enjoy that challenge still of can I impose the discipline on myself? Can I keep my head in the right space so I can stand by my experience, so I can stand by the rank that I achieved, that I earned, and I'm very comfortable with that. I did earn, the rank I hold in karate, but my last grading was 6 years ago. So the challenge is to be credible, and that's the thing for me. And and the thing is, it's not like I'm going around telling people about it. I mean, I know I'm talking about it here, but this is it's germane to to the monologue. It's germane to the tell. That idea of credibility is important to me, because otherwise it becomes a bit meaningless. It has no substance to it. It becomes empty. Now, even though karate means, karate do, the way of the empty hand, that's a different kind of emptiness. And of course, there's a great spiritual purity in that type of emptiness, to empty one's mind, to be in the moment, to be receiving the experience and then responding. I mean, that's part of the way of that. I mean, that's part of the way of all traditional martial arts, in my view. Yeah. So anyway, that swim today, my God, beautiful. I came back home. My wife was teaching some music lessons. My daughter what was she doing? Oh, she was hanging around with a pal. And so I just went to the garden, and again, just appreciated being there. A sunny afternoon. Pepper, the dog, wanted to play, so I kept whacking a ball back into the far end of the back field with a tennis racket, and she was just running, flying through that fence that I referred to last week, and running across that field of buttercups and clover and grass, the tall trees, creating a sort of arena around the field, the blue sky above, white clouds, and yeah, it was just a lovely few moments. And the repetition, yes, that's often a key thing, just the repetition of the simple act, just that repetition of watching Pepper the dog fly across the field, retrieve the ball, come back, jump through the fence, come to the fence closest to me and drop the ball, and to repeat. And we do it again and do it again and do it again until Pepper needed a rest. And then I went and made myself a coffee, and I came back out and sat on a bench in the garden underneath this gorgeously green beech tree, and I was just looking at the leaves blowing in the wind. It was quite a breezy afternoon, and looked at the other trees. There's an ash tree that's it's probably the healthiest it's been since we've lived here at #blessed, because last year I helped my wife, remove some very heavy ivy that was kind of strangling the tree. So it's looking pretty healthy. Behind that beech tree I was sitting under, there's a huge laurel tree, and then of course the lelandai, as they call them, these huge pine trees that tower above everything else. In fact, I took some nice, well, I thought they were nice. I took some nice photos on my phone at the weekend. My wife was just sitting in the garden reading, and Pepper was at her feet, and the chickens were knocking around as well. And I was on the other side of the garden. I was being a good boy. I was hanging out the washing on the clothes horse. But the picture of Kiara just sitting there reading, it just looked really good, and the light was lovely. I must put a couple of those shots up just so you can see, so you can enjoy them yourselves. Wouldn't that be nice? So you can go whatever the Instagram link is there, wherever you're listening. I'll throw a couple of those up. Yeah, just lovely. It's a lovely time of year. And I was there's a shop just down the road from us. I was in there earlier buying some milk, 4 litres of Bonya. And the shopkeeper there, she can't stand cold weather, hates it when it snows, hates the winter, and she is just has been loving this good weather. And she said, oh, it's meant to end, it's going to end this week, there's going to be rain. but hopefully it won't be for too long. And it's that'll be a return to normality, because so many of those Irish summers I remember as a kid, very wet. Not all of them, but not at all unusual. There you go. Listen. This is where you come. This is where you come for the gold. Come to the Clear Out podcast for the gold. A lot of wet summers, but not all of them. Where else would you get it? Magic stuff. Jesus wept. Now it's funny though, I was just in that spirit of remembering summers and being kind of out in nature, I suppose. A lot of my memories, that they're all sort of rural memories. That's where my brain tends to go. I tend not to draw up memories from the more urban environments that I've lived in through my life, and I have done. I've lived in quite a few different places over the years, but my brain selects the memories from different times, memories from my youth, memories from the countryside, and funnily enough, earlier today I was thinking about one of my first summers working with my dad, and we were building a sort of a summer cabin, a little wooden cabin beside a lake, and it was my dad and myself and this neighbour of my father's, a man called Din, who was a short man and had been a miner as a younger man, but he was he was experienced. He was an experienced kind of builder and sort of all round kind of handyman tradesperson, I suppose. Like a lot of country lads would be. They would have thrown their hand at a lot of different things. And that was the crew: myself, my dad, and Din. And I remember we'd stop on the way to the job at the nearest town to pick up a sandwich roll. And I think for some reason, now I would have only been about 15, but I for the few weeks I was on the job, I chose to get a fresh grapefruit as part of my little lunch package. And I may have bought like a bottle of Lucasade or something. I can't even remember. But I do remember getting the sandwich roll made at the sort of salad bar in the shop, and the fresh grapefruit. And Din, he was fascinated by the grapefruit. He's like, "What's that? Did you get yourself a lemon?" I said, "No, Din, no, that's a grapefruit." "Right, a grapefruit, okay." He was very, very amused by it. And he was a really nice man. I always really liked him. He passed away not that many years later, funnily enough. He like within maybe 10 years of that, I think he had throat cancer. But I always found him a very nice man, very nice neighbour, full of stories, just had this very kind of gentle way about him. Although when he was drunk, he used to go on the drink. That's a bit of an Irishism. Like these guys who just go, feck it, and he'd just be on the drink until he was off the drink. So it's not like he's gone to the pub for the day. It might be a week until there was no more drink to be drunk, or no more drink for that particular drunk. But when he was well, there was a famous story, not apocryphal. This happened. Here's a funny one, right? In the area where I grew up, down near Avoca in between Avoca and Rathdrum in Wicklow. There was a German spy who had landed, I think, as I understand it, a German spy who accidentally landed in Ireland instead of England during the Second World War. And I don't think he was alone. There were a few. But he ended up staying in Ireland. Now, I don't know the details of his story. Like, he may have been a guest of the state, so to speak, until the war was over. But he settled here. He stayed here and he married an Irish woman. And he I remember I've got certain kind of images in my mind of him that are, again, they're not taken from a World War II film, but like he did have a leather coat, and he did have a chunky white polo neck. And he and Din, apparently, because they both frequented the same bar in the area, they had a row one time. Din, probably called him out for being an uppity German. He was just a local character. But he had a certain hauteur about him. A certain, I don't know, a military bearing or an upper class bearing, or something, belonging to a class of people that didn't really exist among the locals of where I grew up. And in any case, Din had a row with him one night, and this this former German spy, he had a great riposte, a great insult for Din, which was very simply, "You are not fit to hold my stirrup." And I think they had to be separated. Din was not a big man, but he would have been strong enough, I'd say. But that's a great insult, isn't it? You're not fit to hold my stirrup. That's a real dressing down. I have nothing but contempt for you. Another thing about Din that I learned on that job, that I saw on that job, was fascinated by. He used to put out his cigarette by spitting in the palm of his hand and then extinguishing the cigarette. I don't know why he didn't just like flick the cigarette to one side, but it was that was his system, and I was like, okay, that's one way to do it. And he used to give out yards about the midgies, the dreaded midgies. I don't know if you get midgies. How far do midgies travel? Are they an international biting insect? Just these little pesky, tiny bugs that they just seem to be abundant in Ireland. They proliferate every year, it seems, every summer, and they do like being near water. So there's loads here. Every morning they're annoying me when I'm out in the field doing me stuff. But Din used to give out yards about the midgies. Yeah, that was good. I enjoyed that job. It was very nice. Really lovely, actually. I remember classic young guy on a building job mistake. One of my jobs, one of the days, was to paint the floor. And of course, what did I do? That's right, I painted myself into the corner. Help me, Louis, that's my father. Louis. I was able to climb out the window, so I didn't get stranded there. So I was thinking about that today. That was nice. And other jobs as well. I was thinking of another job I did with my dad, which would have been maybe the following year, and it was just a sort of a refurbishment of an old stone house, kind of out in the back end of Glenmalure, up in the Wicklow Hills. And yet again, my father had this amazing knack for, I may have mentioned this before, he had this amazing knack of attracting well-off female clients. Yeah, I know, I can hear, I mean, I know I've said that before, and I've said it here on the podcast before. So the summer cabin, the previous year, that was a female, a wealthy female client. And then the job the following year, another wealthy female client. Yeah, what a he knew his fan base, I guess. So he did very well. But that was a nice job. And you know what? The bottom line is, the reason I remember I have these kind of fond memories of those jobs is my dad was always incredibly easy to work for and work with. Just very, very chilled. He didn't get cranky. You know, you hear me frequently on the podcast talking about how cranky I can get, how grumpy and snappy and barky I can get with my daughter. And not something I'm proud of, and something I continue to try and challenge in myself. And I'm failing. That's the simple truth. I'm not on top of whatever that is. And it bothers me and it upsets me, because I think my daughter deserves better. I mean, she gets a lot of good stuff as well, don't get me wrong, and we have a lot of good times, and yeah, she's very she's more forgiving of my crankiness than I am of my crankiness, and I don't like that either. she shouldn't have to be dealing with that at all. Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? That inability to control oneself. It's I don't know. I mean, see, I'm just thinking out loud, the idea of treating people that you really love like they're strangers, and doing that as a way to treat them better. That's kind of messed up, isn't it? That's very unnatural. But that's a strategy, isn't it? Because there's no way I'd speak to another child of my daughter's age, another girl like my daughter's. No, like another child of my daughter's age, I wouldn't be speaking to them the way I find myself speaking to my daughter. And it is this terrible kind of complacent, permitted transgression I think we allow ourselves with those closest to us. And I spoke about this all the way back in the first episode of the podcast, and you know, because I think we operate on an assumption of longevity. We operate on an assumption of there's going to be time. And see, this is something I was talking about with my friend yesterday when we were talking about her father who'd passed away, and dealing with, you know, the grief, the sadness, and how, like she was just saying, how it's kind of really kind of sharpened her sense of that illusion and that kind of delusion that there's time. There's always time. Yeah, there's always time until there isn't. And you want to kind of get to that. You don't want to get to that place where you're forced to say, it's too late. I missed my chance. Now, I was not arguing, but I was offering to my friend yesterday. I was just kind of asking, you know, if she had a place that she could go where she felt she could still communicate with her father, because I do believe in that. Like, I think we do have agency to kind of set our own rules and create our own habits. I mean, I spoke about this last week. Putting things in place. The process, and I do think that is that can be an extremely useful strategy in terms of trying to live well and be healthy, and be more kind of on top of ourselves and at ease with ourselves, and to be comfortable with ourselves, because I think that's the ultimate goal. That if there's a place of retreat, you want it to be a place where you can regroup and then be of greater use to yourself, and by extension of greater use to the people around you. Because for me, I think that's the way forward. I think that's the way to have a more fulfilled life, and to have a life where you're not looking over your shoulder, or you're not feeling you have to re-examine the messy moments, as I find myself doing here. And I mean, obviously, my recurring theme of not being entirely thrilled with my parenting dynamic. That's that you're bearing witness, albeit in audio form. You're bearing witness to me examining my own failings and my own sense of that. And don't get me wrong, I don't kind of overdo that, and I recognise the glass is even greater than half full in that area. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm not afraid to look at myself and check myself and go, come on, you can do better. And I sort of expect better of myself, because that's I want my daughter to have a better experience. Okay. Anyway, look, I'm not sure what the hell not sure what the hell this episode has been. There was interference that broke the flow, and I think my energy has picked up as the episode has gone on. But now I am going to retreat to my bed, and I'll be back next week with something else. I'm going to have to reflect now and decide what this week's theme was, so I can do my preamble. Anyway, if you stayed this long, God bless you. Fair play to you, and thank you so much. You can always throw me some love on social media. You can get behind this independent podcast financially by using the supporter link, or by becoming a patron of the show using the Patreon link. All these things are there. Wherever you're listening to this episode, you'll find that information. You'll find those links, and I'd welcome anything, any level of engagement. Feel free to reach out. Feel free to bounce this episode or the podcast to somebody else. Give me a shout out on social media. Whatever. Do what you want. Okay? I'm not forcing you to do anything. I'm not trying to bring you into the karate club. I'm not trying to make you get into the water. You do you, I'll do me. And we'll just see. We'll see how far we go with that approach. Okay. Thanks again. I appreciate you listening. Appreciate you giving me your ears. And I will talk to you soon. All the best. Mind yourselves. Cheers. Bye.